Hi everybody. This was my keynote address which I delivered at the Pondicherry Institute of Medical Sciences on the occasion of Scientific Society Day. Since the recording was not great, I thought I would record it again using Zoom. Let me start my presentation with a question, rather two questions. Why are we not leading the world? Why are we not even a developed country? We are a country of 1.3 billion people, but then are we leaders in any of these things? Social welfare, healthcare, research, business, sports, technology, anything? Or are we satisfied with the status of the above in the country? We are supposed to be one of the superpowers in research. In 2009, we were in 6 or 7 in the line. And in 2018, we moved to third spot. Lo and behold, don't be fooled by statistics. This is based on the number of publications in chemistry, physics, and biosciences. What I'm trying to say is, this is about quantity, not quality. Think for a moment. How many innovations have come out of India? How many theories have been propounded by our scientists in physics and chemistry? Let us take medicine. How many drugs have we discovered and developed in India? My question is, what is our contribution to science and modern medicine? If you ask me, my answer will be in one single word, that is dismal. So let me come back to my original question. Why are we not leading the world? My take is, we lack the right attitude. What is that attitude? We shall say that in a few seconds. For the next 25 minutes, I'm going to talk about leadership. I'm going to cover the definition of leadership, the qualities of a good leader, and the leadership styles. And finally, I'm going to end my talk by listing the differences between leaders, bosses, and managers. So what is leadership? Leadership is not a position or post, but an attitude, that is mindset. So the leadership is an attitude. This is the attitude I was talking about a few slides back. And it is defined by the way you think and the way you behave. So how will you define leadership? There are many definitions for leadership, but all of them agree on one point, that is the ability of one individual to influence others to change the behavior of others with an objective of achieving a shared goal. Of course, no definition is exact and complete. That is why Warren Bennis, a guru in training people in leadership, puts it in a lighter way. To an extent, leadership is like beauty. It is hard to define, but you know it when you see it. What are the characteristics of leadership? A leader must have a team. If there is no team, there is no leader. It is a working relationship between leader and his team. Purpose is to achieve some common goal. A leader influences his followers willingly, not by force. Leadership is exercised in a given situation. It's a continuous process, not a one-time affair. Aha, now we have come to an important question. Do we have leaders? We have no depth of people occupying the leadership post, but without leadership qualities. Why should that happen? We have not been taught what leadership is or trained to be good leaders. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been taught or trained in any of these things anytime? Communication, teamwork, critical thinking, creative thinking, networking, problem solving, conflict resolution, leadership in your school days, or when you entered the college, or when you are doing postgraduate training, anytime, anywhere. The sad fact is, many of us have not even heard of these terms in our school or college days. Suppose we get a chance to head the department. How do we run it? What we do is we just observe or find out what our predecessors or seniors did and just copy it. Rarely we get someone who likes to change what is going on, and very, very rarely we get someone who aims high and has a will to rock the boat. Another important question, who should be leaders? I am just an assistant professor. Am I a leader? This kind of questions stem from the notion that only HODs, deans, and directors should be leaders, and they only should have leadership qualities. I would rather say all physicians function as leaders on a daily basis. You might ask how. What is the traditional leadership like in medicine? It is hierarchical, tyrannical, intimidatory, fearsome, abusive, malignant, inflexible, intolerant. Never argue with the chief. That is a dictum because the boss is always right. This is not acceptable at all now. In your early career, you are a team leader. You have a couple of senior residents and 5 to 10 postgraduates with you. This is physician team and you are the leader. And in a mid-career, you become a group leader. You will be heading the department. And in your late career, you might get a chance to head an institute. So at that time, you become an organizational leader. Hence, if you are a physician, you are a leader. What exactly are the leadership qualities? If you go through articles on leadership, you will find a lot of qualities are listed in the order of the author's choice. I would put courageous first because in India, if you want to sustain yourself as a leader, you need a lot of guts. Because when you want to make some changes, immediately there will be 10 people up in arms opposing the change. And you have to meet them. That needs a lot of courage. And also you need courage to lose sight of the shore to explore the high seas. Meaning you will take risk to leave the zone of comfort to achieve something big. So risk taking is one of the important qualities of a leader. And to take risk, you need a lot of courage. Next one is honesty and integrity. I don't think any explanation is needed for this. Vision, every leader should have a vision. Then only is going to achieve something. And you may have sight, but if you don't have a vision, you are still considered blind. Empathy, we all empathize patients. 99.99% of us empathize patients. But do we empathize our co-workers? Why should we behave like a corporate manager when it comes to co-workers? Self-awareness, know thyself. Now every leader should be aware of himself. He should be aware what he can do, what he cannot do, what are his strengths and what are his weaknesses. A leader cannot survive without being aware of himself. The next one is communication, a very important quality of a leader. A leader should have clarity of thought and clarity of communication. Then only he can convince his followers or his team members. And also, communication means it is not only talking, it is also listening. It is said that the good leaders are, good listeners also. They not only talk, they will also listen. Commitment. This comes from passion, perseverance, and courage. A good leader never leaves a good fight, which enables the team to achieve the goals. Now, if someone wants to be committed, he needs a lot of courage. Decisiveness after appropriate consideration. Many times leaders face situations that have a number of options. Now, all options have pros and cons, and there may not be any easy choice. So the leader has to go through each option. He has to analyze the pros and cons, and he has to choose the best. So leaders have to find a way to be comfortable making those decisions. Humility. It is said leaders should be the frame, not the picture. They should inspire others to do the work and let them take the credit. Remember, leader will be the first one to take the blame and the last one to take the credit. In this regard, I remember something said by our late President, Dr. Abdul Kalam. He was involved in sending rockets in ISRO. It was the first mission, and he was to press the button. Computer was warning him not to do, but then he ignored the computer warning and pressed the button. The next second, boom, the rocket exploded. At that time, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai was the chief of ISRO. Press was waiting outside. Dr. Vikram Sarabhai told Kalam and others not to worry. He would go and meet the press. So he went out, met the press, took the blame, and then he assured them they would succeed next time. The second mission was a complete success. They were able to launch the rocket successfully. So at that time, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai told Kalam and others, now you go and meet the press. That is what I call leadership. Then ability to delegate. Delegating is a skill that leaders should develop. They cannot insist on doing everything themselves. If they do everything themselves, it is going to be a disaster. And another thing a leader should not do is micromanaging, because micromanaging by leaders is not going to work, and it will be painful for the team. In this context, I remember a quarrel by Thiruvalluvar, who succinctly tells the kings how to delegate. What he says is, இதனை இதனால் இவன் முடிக்கும் என்றாய்ந்து அதனை அவன் கண் விடல். Meaning, find out, analyze who can do and what, and delegate the work accordingly. Sure, a good leader needs so many qualities, but why should I be a good leader? Because good leaders only make good doctors. Remember, physician leadership is critical for better patient outcomes, clinical performance, and professional satisfaction. That is why you have to be a good leader. Okay, let me tell you something about leadership styles. There are three main types. One is directive, number two is participative, three is delegative. Directive is also known as autocratic. Well, here the leader calls his teammates and everybody, and then he tells them, you do this, you do this, you do this. No questions asked, you are dismissed. Well, that's all. This is called directive type. Then participative, here the leader, he calls his teammates and he explains his mission or the work, and then he tells them how to do it, and also he participates in the work. So this is referred to as inclusive or democratic. And there is another type called delegative. It's also known as laissez-faire. This means leave alone. Well, here the team members are as good as the leader. So here the leader calls the team members and tells them his idea, or he explains his goal, and then he leaves them alone. Since the team members are as good as the leaders, they know what to do and how to do. They are left alone. Of the three types I listed, which style is the best? If your team members are able and willing, all you need to do is only monitoring, because they are as good as the leader. Now, if the team members are unable and unwilling, then the directive type of leadership is required. So, what is best is situational leadership, which means choosing the right leadership style for the right people and situation. So, situational leadership is the best. Let me explain leadership styles using an example for each. There was a major accident on the highway, and 50-something patients will be reaching the emergency services in less than 1 hour. What will the HOD of emergency medicine do? He simply calls all his teammates and tells them 50 RTA patients are going to land up in the casualty within 1 hour. So you do this, you do this, you do this. Come on, we are still standing here. Get to work. In the second example, the same HOD of emergency medicine comes out with an idea of conducting an international conference in January 2022. So he calls a meeting of his colleagues over a cup of coffee. He explained his idea of conducting a conference, that too an international conference on emergency medicine. And he convinces them by saying what good can happen to the department if they go ahead and conducting a conference. So everybody gets convinced. Then he assigns different work to different people. You look after accommodation. You look after travel. You look after stage management. I do all the scientific work. Now, one of the junior members in the department gets up and tells him, you asked me to look after accommodation. I have absolutely no experience. Now this chief reassures him, don't worry, I know what to do and how to do. I will tell you how to go about it. You don't worry. This will be a learning experience for you. Now, the same chief happens to be the dean also. So in the third example, the dean, who happens to be the HOD of emergency medicine, would like to design and implement a new curriculum for pre and paraclinical subjects. He thinks the undergraduate students are not getting enough clinical exposure. So he calls a meeting of heads of pre and paraclinical departments and also some experienced faculty members from these departments. And he tells him his idea. He explains the goals. And then he leaves them alone. So these heads of the departments and also the experienced faculty members, they are as good as the dean. They know what to do. So they are able to design a curriculum and they are able to implement it also. So what the dean does is, he conducts only monthly meetings with these HODs and the senior faculty members. And he monitors how the planning and the implementation is going on. That's all he does. So the perfect leadership is one which includes all these three types of leadership: autocratic, delegative, and democratic. The desire to lead. A leader should have the desire to lead. If you don't have the desire to lead, don't take up any leadership post. Of course, a leader should have honesty and integrity, self-confidence, intelligence and job-related knowledge are very important for a leader. He should seek input and he should treat people with respect. You should respect seniors. At the same time, you should also respect the juniors. Some people think that they can please the seniors and they can afford to kick the juniors. This is very sad. Leaders don't dictate and they challenge the team members occasionally. Only if you challenge the team members, you'll get the best out of them. Of course, high self-monitoring is one of the qualities of successful leaders, and they also have patience. What is the significance of leadership? How should a leader function? He should set goals, motivate employees, build morale, create confidence, impose discipline, develop teamwork, facilitate change, and finally, represent the group. A successful leader is good in all these things. I already told you leadership is a continuous process, not a one-time affair. When you become a leader, you should be aware of the traps and you should avoid them at any cost. If you don't, then your leadership will become bad and it will be detrimental. What are these traps? The first one is truth, if it becomes a weapon against persons. Then loyalty, if it becomes blind, careless trust. Tolerance, if it becomes indifference. Self-confidence, if it becomes arrogance. Faith, if it becomes self-righteous. First, let me list the differences between a boss and a leader. I was complaining we have no leaders. If we do not have leaders, who do we have in leadership posts? We do have leaders, but they are very few in number. We have many bosses, We have lots and lots of managers. Now, you might be wondering what makes a person a leader, a boss, or a manager, and how are they different? Let me explain it. Boss depends on authority, whereas leader depends on goodwill. Boss instills fear because he is not confident of himself, whereas leader generates enthusiasm. Boss uses people for self-promotion, whereas leader develops people. Boss grabs credit, leader gives credit. Boss blames others for breakdown, whereas leader silently fixes the breakdowns. And boss always says, I did that, I did this, and tells others to go and do it. Whereas leader always says, we did this, we did that, come on, let us go and do it. Boss never shares authority and responsibility. Again, he is not confident of himself. Leader willingly shares both. Boss holds grudges, anger, and jealousy. Even if you make him slightly angry, he is going to hold grudge. Whereas leader forgives and moves on. Boss clings to the past and copes with the present, whereas leader strives to create a better future. Boss is not bothered about value, whereas leader leads with values. Boss never learns from failure, whereas for leader, failure is the best teacher. Boss talks more than they listen, whereas leader listens more than they talk. Boss criticizes and points out weaknesses always, whereas leader encourages and recognizes natural gifts. Ego and self-interest are more important for a boss, whereas leader is always down to earth and puts teams and teammates' interests first. Boss demands respect, whereas leader commands respect. Boss favors followers. He likes slaves. He creates more of them, whereas leader creates more leaders. Remember, the function of leadership is to create more leaders, not followers. Now, let me list the differences between a manager and a leader. Manager oversees the current process well. His dictum is do things right, whereas leader wants to create the future. Do right things is his dictum. Manager must achieve balance, whereas leader needs to make change. And manager thinks execution, whereas leader thinks ideal. Manager is comfortable with control, whereas leader welcomes risks. For a manager, problems are just that, and he needs resolution as soon as possible. Whereas leader sees problems as opportunities and is patient. For a manager, procedure is the king. He follows rules. For a leader, substance trumps the king. He makes the rules. Manager is impersonal and remote, whereas leader has got high emotional intelligence. Manager plans, organizes, directs, and controls, whereas leader inspires, influences, motivates, and builds. You work for the manager, whereas when it comes to the leader, you follow him. So who is better, leader or manager? Remember, good leaders are good followers too. Good leaders are good managers too. You need to have good managerial skills to become a good leader. Now, it may not be possible to have only one role. You may not have only the leadership role. You may have to play both roles, both leader as well as manager. Let me explain. You are heading a department. So in the department, you are a leader, whereas you will be working under a director. So for a team, you will be the leader. When it comes to a bigger group, you will be a team member. So you have to have both skills, both leadership skills as well as managerial skills. I started my presentation with a question. I would like to end it with another. Do you want to remain as a manager or become a good leader? I have no doubt most of us are very good managers. But when you are offered a leadership post, do you want to remain as a manager or move up, assume the role of a leader? Now, I know all of you are going to say, that you want to become a good leader. In that case, you should develop the qualities of a good leader. Adopt a suitable leadership style depending on the situation. Never even think of being a boss. Let me end my talk with a kural. This kural I came across 3 or 4 decades back. I like this one because it had a lot of impact on me. The kural is, Kana muyaleida ambinil, yanai pilaitha velendal inidu. Here, Thiruvallur gives a simple and very powerful message to leaders. What he says is, think big, act bigger. That is the message. Let me read the kural again. Kana muyaleida ambinil, yanai pilaitha vel yendal inidu. Let me explain this Thirukkural using a story. There was a king who was getting old. So he wanted to give the throne to one of his sons, twins. But he wanted to find out who was more suitable. So one day he called both of them. And he told them to go to the forest and hunt something and come back. One son chose bow and arrow. Our son chose a spear. After some time, one son returned. One who chose the bow and arrow, he came back holding a rabbit in his hand, and he proudly declared, "Dad, I have hunted down a rabbit." At the time, the other one came, empty-handed, literally empty-handed. The king asked him, "Son, what happened?" The son told the dad, "I spotted an elephant. I threw the spear and it pierced the elephant. But then the elephant started running. I chased it, but then I couldn't succeed." Now, if you were the king, whom would you choose? If you were the king, whom would you choose? Thank you very much for listening.